The Playboy's Baby Mama, written by Blessing Egamuge. Rhea sat alone at the bar, sipping on her alcoholic drink. She was very bored and lonely, since one of her best friends got married, and the other was now in California. She was looking for some excitement. Her life was boring and plain, following a bloody schedule. Rhea was tired of that. She wanted something more. As she sat thinking about her depressing, boring life, she was wearing a short, red dress, which showed her creamy thighs and long legs with a plunging neckline. She had coupled the daring dress with a pair of gold stilettos. Her usually brown straight hair was dyed blonde and was now curly, falling to her back. Her brown eyes were lined with black eyeliner, making her eyes seem to pop out. She tapped her feet to the loud music as she sat at the bar stool, staring at the bartender, who looked Jamaican with his long dreadlocks. The club was in full force. As the music blared loudly from the speakers, the building seemed to vibrate with the noise. It was already dark, and the only source of light was the red hue that lit the club. There were people everywhere, some already plastered, most well on their way to getting drunk. They were all moving their bodies, gyrating to the sound of the music. Rhea scanned the entire bar. She had the plan of having fun, but she just ended up staring at everyone in the club. She could see different people. She glanced at each and every one of them. One particular chocolate-skinned girl, who was in a black leather skirt and leather jacket, reminded Rhea of RM. RM, short for Rosemary, was Rhea's best friend. She loved all things leather and hated flowery dresses and heels. She was completely different from Rhea. Rhea missed her friend. RM had moved to California a few weeks back, since she had gotten a job there. It had always been RM's dream to get away from her parents, since they were very confining. RM wasn't Rhea's only close friend. Her other friend was Rory, short for Aurora. They used to be very close. They had met in high school. Rhea had just moved to a new neighborhood and had just started the new school. Rory befriended Rhea just to piss her father off, since their fathers were business rivals, but they had become closer with time. Rory was the sister she never had. Rhea joined their clique back at high school and was the third and last member, since RM and Rory were already friends. But Rhea was feeling very lonely since Rory just got married to her childhood friend. She chuckled to herself as she remembered how Rory moaned and complained about her new husband. Tori denied being in love with her husband Nate, but Rhea knew that they would have a happily ever after. She was sure of it. "What is making such a beautiful lady smile?" a smooth, sexy voice said, jolting her out of her thoughts. She turned to see the most handsome man she had ever placed her eyes on in her entire lifetime. He looked kind of familiar, but Rhea was sure if she had ever seen the Greek god before, she would have never forgotten his face. His skin was white, but with a tone to it, and Rhea wondered if it would taste as good as it looked. A mop of black hair atop his head, with a face too gorgeous to be a male's. His light blue eyes shone on his face, surrounded by long lashes that Rhea was already jealous of. His face structure looked like it was sculpted by the gods, with perfect cheekbones and a long, straight nose. She could imagine him running his nose along her neck or along her thighs. And his lips, a light pink perfection, shaped like a cupid bow. She saw him bring out his pink tongue and run it over his lips as his stare ran hot over her. She could feel moisture pool into her panties. Just staring at him made her wet. She could imagine that pink tongue of his doing wonderful things to her. She stifled a moan at the thought. As she glanced down at his body, she noticed that he was fit. He was lean and long, yet with muscles in the right places. He had long limbs and fingers, something that Rhea had always loved in men. He was wearing a black silk shirt with black cotton trousers. He looked like he belonged in an office and certainly not in a bar. "Enjoying the view, doll?" the handsome godlike man said, in his panty-dropping voice, and Rhea almost melted in her chair. He had moved close to her, too close. His breath was hot on her ear, and she was basically breathing the same air with him. She felt all hot and bothered. The air in the bar suddenly became too stuffy. "Huh," was the only dumb response that could come out of her mouth. She wasn't even sure if her brain was still attached to her body. She stared at his perfect face as she breathed in his manly cologne, and she did something that she didn't think she could ever do. Something that she might come to regret after a while. She closed the space between them and smashed her lips onto his. Rhea didn't know if it was the alcohol that was giving her all the courage, or if it was simply the fact that she just needed to escape, but she didn't care. Kissing him felt like eating the forbidden fruit, so sweet and so addicting. As she took him unaware, she was in control of the kiss, but just for a while. He quickly took over and started dominating. His long fingers, which she had noticed, grasped at her now golden hair, angling her neck to take the kiss deeper. The obviously unnatural blonde took Jason by surprise as she pressed her lips to his. He had certainly not expected her to do that. He had just returned from Paris, where he had a modeling gig, and was in need of a good fuck. He was hoping to pick up Brittany, one of his regular fuck buddies from the bar, but Brittany wasn't on shift. Jason knew that if he called her she would be there in a bit, but he decided not to. She was already getting too clingy and he wanted to get rid of her. He was scanning the bar for a suitable replacement and hopefully a new fuck buddy, when his eyes landed on Little Miss Red. She looked so out of place in the bar. It wasn't that she didn't look the part in her short red dress and fuck-me heels. It was the fact that her eyes kept darting around, like she expected someone to throw her out. She was also dragging at the hem of her dress in an attempt to make it longer, though Jason didn't understand why on earth she would want to cover those beautiful long creamy thighs. He walked towards her, her innocent-like aura drawing him in. As he walked closer to her, he could make out some of the details of her face through the dim light of the club. Her big dark brown eyes, her cute button nose and her sexy as hell lips. He could vaguely see her lips turn up in a smile. She hadn't even noticed him yet. What the hell is wrong with me? Why the fuck am I staring at a stranger like a lovesick fool? Jason thought to himself. He was starting to seem like a stalker, and so he talked to her. He asked her the reason for her smile, and her eyes jolted up to meet him. Jason knew that the attraction was very much mutual. She took her time to check him out, and Jason couldn't help but seem smug at the fact. His eyes wandered to her two creamy molds that were barely covered by the red dress she was wearing. They were a C-cup at least. He could imagine them filling his palms as he delivered his sweet torture on them. He asked if she was done checking him out, pulling himself closer to her. It was as though she had pinned him with a hook, and she was dragging him closer and closer. He could hear her breath hitch. He could tell she was aroused. He knew very well that she liked what she saw. Well, every woman did. He could see her make a barely audible response, and he smirked at her cuteness. And then she did something that he never expected. She pushed herself to him and smashed those sexy lips of hers on his. He was shocked and taken unaware, so much so that for the first few seconds, he didn't respond. She was taking control of the kiss, gliding her lips over his. And then he put his fingers into her long silky hair, pushing her head back to deepen the kiss, pushing his tongue further into her mouth. She made small mewling sounds that made his cock twitch as she rubbed her body on his. He could feel her pebbled nipples through the silk of his shirt. He could feel her fingers go into his hair, tugging on his short curls. By then he was fucking her mouth with his tongue and his hand, had made it to the front of her dress, rapidly flicking her hard nipple. His other hand was already making his way under her dress, and she was grinding in it. Jason knew that if they didn't stop now, he would end up fucking her inside the club. Not that he minded a bit of exhibition, and not that anyone would even notice, but he wasn't sure little Miss Red would like it. And so Jason removed his hand from under her dress, albeit begrudgingly, and tore his mouth from hers. Laying little kisses on his neck, he whispered to her, "Let's get out of here." Little Miss Red stood up immediately and followed him out of the club. He immediately hailed a cab, and they continued their intense makeout session inside. By the unexpected kiss, Jason had figured she knew who he was, and probably had fantasies about fucking him or something, but as the night went on, he figured he could be wrong. Immediately they got to the stranger's condo in Manhattan. They didn't waste any more time in ripping each other's clothes of their bodies, each one of them desperate for a touch of bare flesh. "God, you look sexy," Jason said to her, only breaking from the kiss to stare at her. She was only clad in her favorite, red lacy lingerie, which she bought from Victoria's Secret. Rhea was so glad she wore them as she saw the look it elicited from the hot Greek god. He didn't wait for her reply as he pressed his lips once again on hers, thrusting his very hard penis against her barely clad form. The only material preventing them from joining was her flimsy panties and his boxers. The friction made her see stars. "God, that feels so good," she moaned out loud. His mouth had left hers and was latched on to the point where her shoulders met her neck, teasing and sucking and loving. "Not God, baby, just Jason," he said. Jason. Even his name sounded phenomenal. Before she could think of anything more, his mouth latched on to her puckered bud, suckling it through the lacy material of her bra, and as she felt his hot, wet breath on her breast, she couldn't simply have any reasonable thought. And for the rest of the night, he made her scream like never before. His name never left her lips. Rhea groaned, and wondered why she didn't close the damn curtains before going to bed the previous night. She snuggled further into the fluffy pillow, trying to hide her face from all the light. She was still shifting when she felt the presence of another body beside her. Why on earth is another human being in my bedroom? Have I been robbed? Have I been kidnapped? All those questions flew through Rhea's mind before the events of the previous night came back to her. She remembered meeting the stranger at the bar. She remembered finding him very attractive. She remembered kissing him. She remembered screaming his name. Jason. She couldn't help but feel embarrassed as she remembered how wanton she had acted the previous night. Like a woman with no home training, like a bloody slut. No matter how much she would have loved to blame all the alcohol for her behavior, she just couldn't. She only had 2 drinks, and was only slightly tipsy. She was very much aware of her actions. She lifted her head slowly from the pillow, planning on stealing a single glance from the Greek god she had slept with the night before. She opened only one of her eyelids, and she was met with the most beautiful sight. Beside her lay the handsome male specimen with dark tan skin. She had never really slept with a white man previously, but it seemed like there was a first time for everything. Rhea moaned as she stared at his lean yet muscular arms, his broad chest with his flat, light brown nipples. He didn't look like the type that slept at the gym or was over-involved in muscles, but he had a not-so-defined six-pack, which seemed so inviting to Rhea. Rhea followed the sight of his abdomen to his V-line and the light sprinkle of dark hair, leading to the most alluring part, which was unfortunately covered by his moss green silk sheets, but the tent it made was so obvious and it certainly couldn't be ignored. Rhea licked her lips, thinking of all the naughty things she could do to it. She looked up at his beautiful face and found that his eyes were closed, his kissable lips slightly apart, and he was certainly asleep. So Rhea straddled him, taking the sheets with her. She was careful not to wake him, and she bent her lips to his left nipple, giving it a lick. A bit scared about what to do next, she raised her head up to look at him. He was still sleeping and it seemed as though he hadn't felt a thing. She bent her head and flicked her tongue on the other nipple, using her teeth to scrape it lightly. He still didn't give any indication that he was enjoying what she was doing. She groaned and tried to get of him, tried being the key word. Before she could even move an inch, his hands, which lay useless at his sides before, gripped her to his body. She was shocked, her heart jumping to her throat. She hadn't really expected it. She looked to his face. His eyes were still closed. He obviously didn't want her to stop, so she bent her head and continued her onslaught, sucking and nipping, moving her head down slowly, down to his delicious abs, running her hands round them, and then even lower. By then she could hear his moans and groans of appreciation. She could feel herself getting drenched on them. As she moved to unwrap her present, which was covered in the same mauve green that was the color theme of the entire room, she licked her lips in thought of what was to come. She lifted the sheets slowly and his gloriously hard shaft lay underneath. She hadn't seen too many of them in her entire lifetime. It was about 6 if she could be exact, but that was the most erotic one she had seen. It was thick, hard, with a drop of precum on the tip, showing his arousal. Her sex clenched at the thought of his thick length filling her. Without thinking too much about it, she brought out her tongue and used it to wipe away the drop. Savoring the taste, she couldn't wait to go back for more. She wrapped her fist around his hard shaft and began pumping it. "Honey, I am home," a light-skinned, blonde said as she walked into the room. Rhea froze. She didn't know what to do, whether to stop or not. Jason, the Greek god, had a girlfriend, a fiancée, or even a wife. Rhea felt guilt wash over her, coupled with disgust for herself. She had just been totally screwed. She helped the lowlife cheat on his girlfriend. She immediately removed her hand from his dick and extracted her body from his. "I am sorry. I am really sorry," Rhea said, standing up and using the green sheets to cover her naked body, shame racking through her body. She was utterly and totally ashamed of herself. "You slept with my fiancé," the slim woman screeched, and Rhea felt even more embarrassed. "He had been engaged." "I am so sorry, I didn't know," she said, giving an excuse, but Rhea knew that there was no excuse for what she had done. "Get out," the woman screamed, and Rhea picked up her clothing that was scattered all over the room, not even sparing a glance at the Greek god, who was silent throughout the entire ordeal. Rhea picked up her high heels and basically ran out of the apartment. She was in a cab on the way to her house when she just realized something. She had just sex with a stranger, a man that didn't even know her name. She had no idea what to do, and she could barely hold the tears. It was as though her tear ducts were dams, and they were threatening to burst. There were tears nestled in her eyes, filling them, and they would soon overflow. When she got to Richardson's mansion, Rhea was absolutely glad. She couldn't be more happy. It seemed like everyone was out, and there was no one to ask her questions. Her daddy wasn't there to ask where her baby girl went, and her annoying brothers weren't there to ask her questions. The guards opened up the familiar, huge gates that enclosed the big house within. Rhea absolutely loved her father's house, and although she was already 22, she had never thought of moving out. Rhea entered into the house, her shining gold stilettos hanging from her hand. Tiptoeing and trying not to make any noise, she needed the keys to her car. Immediately she got into the room. She took up the keys of her SUV and came out of the house. walking into the parking lot, ignoring the greetings of the several housekeepers and guards. She truly wasn't in the mood to talk. As she drove her SUV out of her parents' home, her mind kept on replaying the events of morning, like a track stuck on replay. She felt tears pour out of her eyes. She didn't believe she did the thing she found so repulsive. She helped a man to cheat. She just drove around, and after a while she decided she needed some human company, and the only person that came to her mind was Rory. She didn't think about it for too long, so that she wouldn't second-guess herself. She picked up the phone and called her best friend, who picked up on the first ring. "Hey babe, let's get drunk," she said to her friend, not caring how she sounded. "Ria, are you okay?" her friend asked. It was obvious she was worried. "I'm fine," Ria said, and hoped Rory bought it. "You know it, fuck it, let's get drunk." Rory agreed and Ria is relieved. "Yeah babe, let's go to Club Ecstasy." "Ria, it's not even noon. Who says it has to be night to go clubbing?" she asked. "Everybody, it's called a nightclub for a reason," Rory said, and Ria groaned, silently cursing Rory for being so reasonable. "You know what? I am going to steal some of my dad's whiskey, and then we go to our old spot," Ria suggested. Back when they were in high school, and they needed to get away from the world. When Rory and RM were tired of their parents, hold on her, and Ria was tired of faking a smile to the world, they would go to their place. "Okay, I will be here when you are ready," Rory said, and then disconnected the call. Ria felt totally renewed as she drove back to the Robinson mansion and sneaked into her father's study. It was a big office which smelt of cigar and whiskey. She stole, as she would like to say, borrowed the whiskey. She then packed a pair of sweats and a t-shirt in an overnight bag and went back to her car. She began driving to Rory's new house. On getting to the simple house, she didn't even bother to get down from the car. She just honked on her car. In a few seconds, Aurora Walters came out of her house, looking effortlessly beautiful in her oversized shirt and sweats. "Ria, you look terrible," Rory told her the moment she got into the car. Ria just grimaced at that. Rory wasn't one to mince words. "I don't want to talk about it," Ria told her friend, and thankfully she respected her wishes. As they drove to their spot, they sang along to the radio, bringing out their head from the car, letting the wind blow them, only stopping for gas and snacks. Ria felt far away from her problems. She felt free. "We should face RM," Ria suggested to Rory. "Totally." And so they FaceTimed their best friend, laughing along the way, and before they knew it, they were miles and miles away, with no high-rise building in sight, just miles and miles of green land and fresh air. Immediately they got to their spot, Rory picked up her sketchbook and began to draw the most beautiful view. Her best friend was very talented in that area. "Men are very stupid," Ria said to Rory as she took a swig of whiskey straight from the bottle, loving as it burned along her throat, loving the respite she knew it would bring. "Yes, they are," Aurora agreed. "They are very arrogant and feel like the world should be on their feet," Ria said, remembering Jason and his absolute rugged charm, how he was so at ease with himself. It annoyed her. "Yeah, I can't believe I let him fuck me when he had a fiancée," Ria said, feeling a sob creep up her throat, and down more alcohol to push it down. She didn't need to cry, not for him. By the silence from the other end, Ria knew Rory was shocked. She knew that it was not her style. "Well, my husband brought his girlfriend to my house," Rory said, and Ria was shocked. It explained why Rory accepted to go drinking so easily. She was frustrated too. Ria hadn't expected Rory's husband to do that. It didn't seem like his style either. "Men are scum," Ria declared. "Yes, they are." That one looked scared. Brittany said as she laid down on the bed beside him. She was probably expecting Jason to join her to mock Little Miss Red, but Jason was fighting a mind battle of his. He was feeling guilty. He felt guilty fucking her over. He had no plans of taking her home, but she intrigued him. He wanted to know more. She was like the forbidden fruit that he just had to taste. Seeing her face when she thought he had a fiancé showed how incompatible they were. It just showed how much of a good girl she was. It showed that she was the type that did relationships that wanted happily ever after. One that involved a loving husband that mowed the lawn, 2.5 kids with a picket fence. Even thinking about it was nauseating. Jason had no interest in that life. He had no idea why he felt bad when she left. He didn't even know her name, and he had no idea if they would ever meet again. I saw what she was doing to you. Brittany started, wiggling her eyebrows. Do you want me to? She continued, licking her lips in an attempt to look seductive. Finish you of. Jason had never said no to Brittany, and she was marvelous at blowjobs. Come here, he commanded, lying on the bed, gesturing for her to straddle him. He let her suck him of, if for no reason, but to show that he wasn't affected by Little Miss Red. Rhea, wake up, it's almost noon. Rhea heard Rory's annoying voice say. Arg, let me sleep. Rhea said, snuggling further into the very uncomfortable bed. Come on, let's go. Nate has been spamming my phone with calls and messages. AWWN, your husband is so sweet, she said, gushing. It was so cute that Aurora's husband cared so much for her. Well, that doesn't mean I am forgiving him. I am still very much mad at him, Rory said, and Rhea just smiled. She wanted missed calls, but not just from her annoying brothers and overprotective father. She wanted romantic love, someone to hold her. But annoyingly, when she thought of love, her mind went to the handsome devil she had slept with. The one with the fiancé, the one she could never have. Moving on. Where have you been? I have been calling you all day. You left the house for 2 days without informing us. I was worried about you. Those were the first things that Rhea heard as she got to the house that afternoon. Her brothers began bombarding her with such questions, and truth be told, she didn't have the strength to even choke out an answer for them. She felt weak and tired. I don't want to talk about it, Rhea said, pushing her annoying elder brother away from the spot where stood by the door. Theodore looked at her with knowing eyes and left his spot in front of her, allowing her to space. If he hadn't moved from that spot, there was no way Rhea would have been able to force him. Theodore Robinson, the third-born and second son, was so muscular that his appearance screamed steroids. His hair was shaved close to his scalp. He was also 6 foot tall and had the most murderous glare. He looked nothing like his 20 years. Opposing his scary looks, he was actually a big old teddy bear. He was the brother Rhea was closest to, and she called him Teddy. Seriously, Rhea, you go out, don't tell anyone, disappear from the face of the earth for 2 days, and don't pick anyone's calls for 2 days, and you don't want to talk about it, Sebastian Robinson said, and Rhea felt like turning back and throwing her heels at him. Sebastian was the second child and first son of the Robinson clan, the closest to Rhea's own 22 years. Rhea was 10 months older than Seb, and Rhea loved to rub in his face. Seb was her least favorite brother, as they were always competing over everything, and because Seb was so sexist, thinking that women couldn't do anything. Rhea knew that all his talk of care was just to annoy her. At least she thought it was. Mind your business, Seb, Rhea said, turning back and pointing her heel at his annoying self. Physically, Seb looked nothing like Teddy. He had none of his muscles, none of the rugged charm, and just a little of the height. Sebastian was lanky and tall, and always had his signature thick-rimmed glasses on. Where Teddy had his murderous glare, Seb had his serious look, which made him look more of 40 than almost 22. Teddy gave Seb a murderous glare, warning him to leave Rhea be. He was wearing a tight black t-shirt, which showed all his manly biceps and outlined his abs. It also showed the tattoos he had on his arm, as opposed to Seb, who was in an oversized suit. The man lacked a fashion sense. "Calm down, sis, we will walk you to your room," Brian, one of the twins, said, referring to himself and his twin, Max. "Sure," Rhea said and reluctantly turned back, making her way up the stairs and to her bedroom. Brian and Max were the youngest of the Robinson clan, both aged 17. They were as identical as their names, which meant not at all. Brian had a bit of fat on him, and was cute and chubby, with rosy cheeks that he never outgrew. But he had the height that all the Robinson men seemed to possess, with the most beautiful brown eyes. Max was the troublesome twin, the one that felt he was God's gift to women. He was tall, and unlike his brother, he didn't have 1 ounce of fat. But as different as the twins were, they were also very close. No one dared to bully Brian when Max was there, and Max was always there. "You shouldn't mind Seb. He could be an ass sometimes, but he was actually worried about you, though he wouldn't admit that to anyone," Brian said. Out of the twins, Brian was the most talkative. Max had that brooding teenager thing going on. "Are you okay, Rhea?" Brian asked truthfully. It was clear that he could see that something was seriously wrong with her. "I'm fine," Rhea said and went into her room, locking the door behind her, not wanting human company anymore. Rhea looked around her room. It was painted cream. It was a simple color and as girly as it could be. In a house of 4 boys, Rhea had somehow managed to be a girly girl. It helped that her father adored her and did whatever she wanted. She could remember her big businessman of a father sitting and having a doll tea party with her. It was something she loved about her father, how flexible he was. He enjoyed spending time with them all, and he was a wonderful father. Rhea dropped her overnight bag on her perfectly made bed, dropping her heels on the ground and not even bothering to take off her clothes. She plopped on the bed and proceeded to sleep away her Sunday. Beginning the next day, Rhea pushed herself into her work, working and working and working, all in hopes of forgetting the Greek god. She had tried to make herself not to feel guilty by telling herself that she didn't know about the fiancé, and she didn't. Over the weeks, her guilt morphed into hatred for the Greek god and all men like him. Though Rhea claimed to hate him, she couldn't forget him. Wherever the name Jason was called, a whole lot of emotions were opened. And for quite a while, Rhea thought she was going crazy. She began seeing his face on billboards and on magazines. She kept on hearing his name, and she was going crazy. Rhea sighted Jason's face on a magazine as she walked into her father's company on a Monday morning. She was wearing a navy blue pantsuit and had washed out the blonde dye and cut her hair into a small bob, giving her an office look. OMG, Jason White is looking so hot on this edition of The Handsome. Gianna, the receptionist, said, gushing over Jason's picture, and Rhea froze. She literally felt every bone in her body freeze. She took a deep breath. She thought she was probably hearing things. Jason is so handsome. I wish I could have one night with him. Gianna continued, putting her hand on her cheek, a dreamy look on her face. Gianna was a young girl, even younger than Rhea was, with a small pixie-like body and a cute smile. Oh please, as if he would sleep with you. He might be a playboy, but he wouldn't stoop that low. Tricia, one of the secretaries, said. Tricia was one of those blonde hotshots, only that she wasn't blonde. She had a head full of black hair and clear white skin. She was beautiful and she knew it. so much so that she felt no one else was. "I am sure that Jason would definitely marry me," Tricia said. None of them had seen her, and so Rhea decided to make herself known. "Isn't Jason engaged?" Rhea asked. She wanted to know if it was Jason, the one she had slept with. She wanted to know if she had been imagining things. "Miss Robinson, good morning, ma'am," they both said, looking a bit guilty. On a normal day, she would have scolded the both of them for gossiping during work hours. But Rhea wasn't interested in doing any of that. That was the farthest thing from her mind. "Forget that. Isn't Jason White engaged?" Rhea asked again. She needed to know if she was going crazy or not. "Engaged?" Tricia asked, laughing, and Gianna even joined laughing. "Jason White is Playboy personified. He's one of those bachelors that never get married," Tricia said, laughing, and she got real comfortable quickly. "Can I see a picture of this Jason White?" Rhea asked, and they both looked at her as though she just grew another head. "You don't know what Jason White looks like?" Tricia asked, almost screaming. They were pretty lucky that the morning rush was over and just a few people were in the lobby. Rhea had resumed work very late. "Well, should I?" Rhea asked, shrugging, hoping and praying that Jason White was the Jason, the one she spent a night with a few weeks ago. "Of course you should. He is only the most handsome model on the planet," Gianna said. "Here, take a look," Tricia said, pushing the magazine into her hand, and lo and behold, it was the picture of Jason that she had been staring at from the lobby. The handsome devil was shirtless, modeling a pair of boxers, making him look even more mouth-watering. The fact that she had seen everything beneath his only piece of clothing didn't make him less appealing, it made him even more. He is actually a new face. He was an international model and just started modeling in New York, so his face is now everywhere, Tricia said, and suddenly everything became clearer to her. She wasn't getting crazy. Everyone could see the pictures she saw. The reason she hadn't seen his pictures before was because they weren't there. But something still wasn't clear. If he wasn't engaged, then who was the woman that claimed to be his fiancée? "So this guy isn't engaged?" Rhea asked again, to be clear. "No, he isn't," Gianna said. After that experience, Rhea Googled Jason White. Her search that brought up several pictures of him with several women, all looking seductive, sometimes even more than one woman. By the end of her search, she found out he lived in New York, but was constantly traveling to other countries, especially in Europe. Her search had only shown how unsuitable they were for each other. They would probably never see each other. He might not have a fiancée, but there was no way he would be with her. No matter how much she tried to convince herself that he was bad for her, that he would have used her and dumped her, that he was a playboy, that she didn't need him, it didn't work out. She still dreamt of him and their one night together. She pushed herself further into her work, anything in order to forget him. She pushed herself, stayed overnight, took on numerous projects, and did more and more. When her father asked what she was running from, she just smiled and told him he was imagining things. The one-night stand affected Jason more than he let anyone know, even himself. He had unconsciously searched for her, day after day. He would go back to the club in hopes of running into her, but day after day he was disappointed. After Brittany had given him the blowjob that night, she promptly broke up with her. Dee was becoming way too clingy, and after Little Miss Red, he simply couldn't fuck her anymore. He didn't have any issue in fucking any other woman though. Truth be told, Jason didn't even know why he was searching for Little Miss Red. He had no idea what he was going to tell her if he ever saw her. It didn't help that he didn't know her name, or even the real color of her hair, but he knew he had to fuck her again. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. And Jason never found Little Miss Red. He focused on his job and expanding his modeling. Even his agent was surprised by how serious he was. He worked and tried to get his mind off her. It didn't work. And even after then he found himself drawn to caramel-skinned, fake blondes in bright red dresses. Rhea met Richard during a business seminar she attended in California. He was nice, funny, they shared goals, he had a stable job, all in all. He was safe, all Rhea ever wanted, but after that encounter, she couldn't get her mind off Jason. Weird enough, Richard was white. She had never thought that she would be so interested in white men until after Jason. It seemed as though he had done something to her. Richard was her rebound. She didn't tell anyone about it. Because it wasn't serious, she knew she didn't love him. There was barely any attraction. When he first kissed her, it was soft and sweet, and she kept on comparing it with when Jason kissed her. The fire wasn't there. Though Rhea didn't love him, Richard definitely loved Rhea. He showered her with love, said the sweetest things, bought the most thoughtful gifts, making her smile, and Rhea loved being loved. And she was happy, and as the months went that love began to wear off on her. She began to think of all the reasons why she should be with Richard. She tried to think of all the viable reasons why she should be with him. She started to open her heart to him. She wanted to love him. It was a reasonable thing to do, but she just couldn't teach her heart. She loved how Richard didn't pressure her, how he took things slow. She met his parents during Thanksgiving, and she was relieved that he didn't feel pressured to meet her. She wasn't sure yet. She had no idea what to do. She knew that what she felt for Jason was far more than what she felt for Richard. In March, 9 months after she saw Jason, Richard proposed to her. He bent on his knee in the middle of the Italian restaurant where they were having a dinner date. She accepted the ring, not wanting to disgrace him in front of a crowd, but later told him in the car that she had to think about it. She wondered how a man that had never met any of her friends would want to marry her, but he seemed to love her. He told her to keep the ring and wear it whenever she was ready. The thing was, she didn't think she would ever be ready. The organ played. Rhea escorted her best friend Rory down the aisle for the second time to the same man. Her eyes met with a pair of blue eyes she thought she would never see again, a pair that belonged to a man she thought she had forgotten. Jason. He glared at her from his position as the best man, standing close to Nate Walters, Rory's husband. To say she was shocked would be a vast understatement. She had no idea he was Nate's best friend during Rory's first wedding. For the last wedding, Nate's best man had been a different man. She remembered his name was Alex, and since the best man hadn't been around for the wedding rehearsals, she had assumed Alex would do it. The feelings that were once buried began to sprout out once more. She couldn't walk there and make herself feel unaffected by him. She had moved on, at least that was what she tried to convince herself of. She had come with Richard to the wedding with thoughts of introducing him to her parents. She wanted to finally make their relationship serious. 2 months after he popped the question, she wanted to finally say yes. And then Jason arrived. She couldn't help but second-guess herself. As Jason shot glares at her, she glared at him too. She couldn't help but examine his appearance. He looked much more handsome in daylight. The light showed his angular face and perfectly arched eyebrows. It showed his lips that were pursed in a frown. Like the groom, he was putting on a dark gray suit, with a white shirt and a red tie, his black hair brushed and his long fingers brushing over the silver Rolex watch he wore. Dearly friends, Nate and Aurora, on the day of your wedding you declared your love for each other. The priest began, bringing Rhea out of her daydream. In the presence of the church's minister and the community, Christ has abundantly blessed your love and will continue to do so. And so on this happy day, I invite you to renew your vows." Rhea tried her best to not think of Jason and focus on the beautiful event that was her friend's wedding. "Aurora Rose Wesley, my wife, my princess, my queen, on this day 1 year ago, I made a commitment to you on our wedding day. I want to renew that commitment. I promise to be good to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love and honor you all the days of my life." As Nate said those words, Rhea almost melted like butter. There was so much love in the words, and Rhea wished for someone to love her that much. Surprisingly, when she thought of love, the first name she thought of was Jason's. "Nathan Christopher Wesley, my husband, my love, my life. I want to renew the commitment I made to you 1 year ago on our wedding day. I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love and honor you all the days of my life," Rory said to her husband, and Rhea could detect the slight shake in her voice. She could tell her friend was nervous, but she could also tell that Rory was being sincere. She loved Nate as much as he loved her. "We will now exchange rings," the priest said. "Aurora, my wife, remember the ring I gave you 1 year ago as a sign of my love and fidelity, which I renew today with this ring. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen." "Nate, my husband, remember the ring I gave you 1 year ago as a sign of my love and fidelity, which I renewed today with this ring. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen." Rhea watched with teary eyes as the couple exchanged rings for the second time. Rhea loved weddings. "You may now kiss your wife," the priest said, and Rhea smirked. The couple didn't waste any much time and moved in for a plunging kiss, one that was inappropriate for a wedding kiss. During the kiss, Rhea couldn't help but meet Jason's eyes, and he glared at her. It was as though he was angry at her. Rhea couldn't even fathom why he would be mad. He really didn't have any right to be. He was the one that had a one-night stand with her. He was the one that claimed to have a fiancé. The priest then asked them to kneel in prayer and bless their marriage, and then it was done. Rory was married again. Immediately after the joining, they moved to the reception. She entered into the limousine with the bride, the groom and the best man, which happened to be Jason. The rest of the bridal party were to ride in the other car. As the chauffeur locked the door against them, the usually space-filled car became stuffy. The newlyweds were in their own world, and they weren't giving any attention to Jason and Rhea. Well, nobody was giving any attention to Rhea. Jason was just typing furiously on his phone, as though he was transferring all his anger on the poor phone. Rhea felt anger rise in her. How could he just sit there and act like they didn't have history? How could he ignore her, like he had never met her before? Like he hadn't fucked her 7 ways to hell and back? Rhea felt like shouting at him, releasing all her pent-up anger on him. But they weren't alone, and she didn't want anyone to know about their one night, not even Rory, and so Rhea quelled her anger and somehow managed to keep quiet. She somehow managed to keep shut. She did glare at Jason. In her head, she had laser vision and was glaring holes into Jason's stupid head. She didn't even see any sign of the blonde from the other day, and she didn't forget a face. She figured both Gianna and Trisha were right. He was certainly not engaged. Immediately they got to the reception site, Rhea marched out of the car, longing to be as far away from Jason as she could. She didn't want his handsomely, rugged charm tempting her. She had a boyfriend, one that she was supposed to be attracted to. She walked into the hall, which was decorated in white and purple for the reception. She mumbled greetings to whoever stopped her along her way to the restroom. Walking into the empty bathroom, she took a deep breath. Staring at her disheveled expression in the mirror, her hair and makeup were fine, but she looked like a deer caught in the headlights. She looked vulnerable. Jason had made her that way. He just came and disrupted her peace. "You have a boyfriend, Rhea, one that wants you to be his fiancé," Rhea said to herself. She wondered if she said it frequently enough, she would actually believe it. "It is easy. Just avoid him and you will be fine," Rhea said to herself once more, thankful that she was the only one in the huge white restroom, that no one hadn't walked in on her talking to herself. It took a while, but in a few more self-motivation and minutes, she made it out of the restroom. Opening the door, she found herself face to face with the very person she had planned to avoid. Jason. As Aurora walked down the aisle in order to be joined, for the second time with his best friend, Nate, Jason's gaze wasn't focused on her, but rather it was on the woman that had plagued his thoughts for almost a year. Little Miss Red. But this time, she wasn't in red. She was dressed in a peach figure-hugging dress that didn't show as much skin as the red, but Jason decided that it looked more sensual. He had finally seen the original color of her hair. It was brown, the thick, dark brown, and it fell onto her shoulder in curly waves. She looked marvelous, ethereal. And then suddenly anger started to rise in him. He was mad. He had been searching for her for almost a year, and yet she had been under his nose all this while. She was Aurora's friend. The thought of it infuriated him. What if she didn't want to be found? What if she had avoided him for that reason? What if he had been wasting his time? All those questions ran through Jason's mind, making him more and more mad. Throughout the joining, he could barely hear what the priest was saying. He just wanted to get Rhea alone. And then after the wedding, as they were about to go to the reception, a lanky tall man, wearing an oversized suit, had given her a hug, and then a simple peck, and Jason felt himself get even more angry. What right did the bastard have to touch her? He tried to keep his anger in check as they were in the car and on their way to the reception, by transferring it to the phone. He didn't trust himself to look at her. Immediately the car stopped. She marched into the reception hall, not waiting for the newlyweds, and he marched after her. He waited for her outside the door of the restroom, and she opened the door, looking a tad bit disheveled. Jason forgot why he followed her in the first place. Staring at her brown eyes and her pink lips that were parted slightly out of surprise, Jason just did the first thing that came to mind. He kissed her. Angling his head, he cupped her cheeks with his two hands and just drank into her essence, tasting, teasing and sucking at her lips. She kissed him back with equal fervor, moving her lips rapidly over his. He took control of the kiss and probed his tongue against her lips, but she kept them sealed, not willing to budge. She pushed against him, trying to extract her lips from his, but Jason wasn't willing to stop. He wasn't ready for the kiss to end. She pushed her shoe to Jason's leg, and he let her go with a pained growl. "You bastard!" she screamed at him. The kiss had opened all kinds of feelings within her, the type that she didn't even want to accept. "What right did you have to kiss me?" she screamed again at him. "You were enjoying it a moment ago, if I am not mistaken," Jason said, smirking, and Rhea gasped at his audacity. "You idiot, you kissed me!" she screamed once again. "And I have a boyfriend," she informed him, and Rhea saw a flash of anger paw through his expression, but it was gone so fast that she couldn't be sure if she had imagined it. "So that prick that had the guts to touch you was your boyfriend?" he asked, in a slow, methodical manner. None of the anger that had flashed on his face sounded in his tone. "So what if he is? You're the one with the fiancé," she said. She didn't know why, but she badly wanted to know if he was actually engaged. "Brittany isn't my fiancé," he said, and Rhea felt happiness that she couldn't even explain. I don't even know why we are having this conversation in this first place," he admitted. "I would rather be doing something else, something that I am sure you will find pleasurable," he said with a smile on his face, wiggling his eyebrows suggestively. Rhea couldn't help but feel tempted. She already knew that even after a year, he still revoked feelings in her, feelings that her so-called fiancé couldn't even rise. But as soon as the thoughts crossed her mind, she couldn't help but feel guilty. What was she thinking? She had a fiancé, one that loved her. But she didn't love him. She didn't feel for him what she felt for her. "I have a boyfriend," she said again weakly. She was sure Jason picked up on the weakness in her voice, as he didn't waste any more time in pressing his lips to hers. Even though she still had doubts, it felt wonderful to have his warm lips on hers. And that time when his tongue probed the seam of her lips, she gave him full access. It seemed as though her brain didn't have control over her body any longer. She just wanted to keep kissing him. She just wanted him to keep holding her. She felt him tug on her hair firmly, almost painfully, and a bolt of pleasure shot through her. As his lips left hers, she couldn't help but whimper at the absence. It didn't matter to her that she needed to breathe. She just wanted to keep kissing him. All thoughts of Richard were long gone from her mind. "Fuck, you're so beautiful, like a temptress," he said as he kissed a path from along her jaw to her neck. His hand had left her hair and was now roaming her thighs, her back, her waist, but never where she wanted it. She wanted to whine and complain, but didn't want to sound like a child. She used her own hands to glide on his suit-encased body, loving the feel of his lean, yet fit body under her palms. She traced the familiar path from his chest and down to his groin. He growled into her neck, and she skimmed her fingers over the fabric, encasing his cock, feeling it grow harder and longer under her touch. She loved the power it gave her, how powerful it made her feel. "Fuck," he said as she gave him a loving squeeze and he bit into her neck. "Let's get out of here," he said, gradually extracting her fingers from his cock. And Rhea followed him, as though in a gaze into the car, not once thinking that they both were an important part of the wedding party. As Rhea drove to work, she remembered the events of the weekend before, of how in her dazed state, she had followed Jason back to his penthouse, the same one he had taken her to almost a year before. She didn't have the time to appreciate the architecture, as the only thing on her mind was having him inside her, filling her to the hilt, and he did. That time was as rushed as their first time and a little more hard. It seemed as though he was transferring some sort of frustration on her, and she loved it. She loved the sound of his raspy growls as he thrust rapidly into her, as he spilled his hot seed into her. Neither of them had said anything about the broken condom. Rhea knew that Jason felt she was on the pill, like she had told him the last time, but that had been a year ago and she had long stopped taking birth control. She tried her best to hide her nervousness as he put his around her, and they went to sleep. The next morning, Rhea had woken up in a strangely familiar room. The room had a green theme. It was quite unusual color for a guy, and Rhea would have expected his room to have a gray theme, or even a white one. Rhea wondered if there was a story behind it. Like the last time, Jason was soundly asleep, his pink lips slightly apart, but unlike the last time, Rhea had no desire to wake him up with a kiss or something more. The morning had come with clarity and the days of the night had disappeared. She truly had no idea why she did what she did. She knew that Rory must have wondered where she went during the reception. She knew that she had just allowed a playboy to sleep with her. She allowed one to come inside her. She knew that she had just cheated on her boyfriend. Like the last time shame came over her, she felt stupid and used. Looking at Jason's sleeping face once more, she gathered her rumpled peach dress, her nude-colored heels, putting them on and picking up her purse, as she took note of the life-sized self-portrait that Jason had in his house. Taking one last look at his sleeping form, she took a step out of his room, out of his house, and out of his life. She had gotten home after then and had been badgered by her brothers with questions. They all thought she had slept over with Richard, whom she had refused to introduce to them, the same Richard that she had basically ditched at the reception. Rhea had decided that she needed to break up with Richard, that he didn't need to be hurt by her, and so she had called him back, and they had a date after work on that day. Rhea's thoughts came to an end as she drove her SUV into the company's parking lot, along with cars of the other directors. She noted the presence of an unfamiliar red Ferrari. She wondered who owned such a beautiful car as she walked into the lobby of the high-rise building. Richardson's Furniture was her father's company. He had inherited from his father, who in turn had inherited it from his own father. It was a family-long business. Rhea's great-grandfather had been a carpenter and had formed the company. With each generation the company had grown in leaps and bounds, with so many branches around the country. Rhea's father had decided to go into hotel management when Rhea was in high school and had become Rory's father's competition. It didn't end well and her father just went back to his origins. Rhea's heels clicked on the tile floors as she walked to the front of the glass building, the lobby man opening the door for her to enter. Greetings from the various staff filled into her ears as she entered the reception. "Good morning, Miss Richardson," Gianna the receptionist said, and Rhea said, "Your father said to inform you that the investors are here," she said, and Rhea nodded. She figured that the sports car belonged to the investor, and so she pressed the private elevator button and pressed the 15th floor. She checked her phone during her elevator ride, and when the silver box dinged signifying that she had reached her destination, she was met with shock of her life. "What are you doing here?" Rhea asked, glaring at the imposing figure of Jason in front of her, as she dragged him inside the elevator, not wanting to attract the attention of the people inside the room. "Are you stalking me?" she asked him, even though he looked as surprised as she was. "Stalking you?" he asked, a look of confusion showing on his face. "Yes, are you?" she asked again, putting her hand on her waist. "I am not. I have a meeting here with the owner of the company. Do you work here?" he asked her, and she just smiled at him. She just loved introductions. "My father is the owner of this company, and I am presently the assistant CEO," Rhea said proudly, and Jason could say he was dumbfounded. Rhea. That was her name. It was nice to finally put a name to the face, and it sounded so much better than Little Miss Red. Jason knew it was the name to some Greek goddess, and he decided that it suited her. On Sunday morning, he wasn't expecting to wake up alone, but he did, and all he could was that payback was a bitch. He felt frustrated and angry. He had actually thought he had something with her, and then she disappeared. And then Monday came, and it turned out he was going to have to see her every day for a long while because his father was about to sign a partnership with Rhea's dad. "Well," she said, tapping her sharp-looking heel on the floor of the metallic box, "I have told you why I am here. You haven't still told me why you are," she said, with a bossy-like attitude on her face. She looked different from the last 2 times he had seen her. For one, she wasn't wearing a dress, but a tight-looking pantsuit, and she was still looking entirely fuckable. "I am here to start a partnership with this company together with your father," he said to her, loving the shocked look that appeared on her face. The truth was that he had no desire to be there, and not one bit, but his father had dragged him there. Jason's father had never really approved of his modeling career, and he wanted Jason to take over the business. Jason couldn't care less about household electronics, as that was what his father dealt with, and all Jason's life his father has bombarded him with his toys, with hope that Jason would come to love them. It seemed that it was for that sole reason that Jason had no interest in it. "Oh, so we are going to be partners," Rhea said. By the sound of her voice, Rhea didn't seem pleased by the fact. "Aren't you happy about that?" he asked her, moving closer to her. He saw her fiddle with her dark brown tresses and tap her foot on the ground. He noted that her toenails were painted in bright red, contrasting nicely with the black peep-toe heels she wore. As he moved even closer to her, he heard her breath hitch. He saw her full breast rise and fall rapidly. He knew that he was affecting her and he loved it. He raised his left hand and brushed it along her cheek, feeling the smooth skin and the sweet mule she released from her lips. He then cupped her jaw and brought his lips to her jaw, and then up to her cheek, but not her lips. He loved how she melted in his touch, how she trembled in it, as she angled her lips closer to his. He knew that she wanted his kiss, that she was desperate for it. "Why did you leave?" he asked her. That question had been on his mind for the past 2 days. He had been beating himself up for what he had done and what he hadn't. "I was scared," she admitted, her voice small. So he kissed her, granting her what she wanted. But unlike their previous kisses, he wanted to savor this one, make it as long as he could. He couldn't tell for long they kissed before he finally came out for air. "We should get to the meeting," she said, blushing, and though Jason had no interest in sitting in a business suit and discussing numbers, he wanted to go to the meeting. The thought of staring at Rhea was enough. "Yes, we should," Jason said, turning and opening up the doors of the metallic box. The meeting was long, but not frustrating as Jason had figured it would be. He enjoyed seeing Rhea in her environment. It was her niche, it was where she thrived. Jason could see the heavy competition between herself and the man that he later learned to be younger brother. He had watched how her curvy as moved as she explained the facts and figures. Truth be told, he didn't hear half the words she said. He was too busy imagining fucking her in that very conference room. "Okay, so it is settled. Jason here will come and work with Rhea for the project for the next 3 months, in preparation for the big launch in August." "Eugene White," Jason's father said, and Jason smirked. If not for the fact that his father had mentioned he would be working with Rhea, he would have disagreed. He was even pretty sure that his father expected him to. That was why when Eugene had seen the smile on Jason's face, a shocked look had come, but a big smile quickly took over. "Yes, it is settled. Till August then. Jason, you start work next week Monday." Oscar Robinson, the eldest Mr. Robinson said, and Jason looked over to see how Rhea was taking the news. There was a conflict of emotions on Rhea's face. It seemed like she was happy but still sad. Seb, her younger brother, was looking like a bee stung him. It was quite obvious that he wanted to be the one working on the project, not Rhea. After the meeting ended, Rhea dashed out of the room, quickly, not even waiting for anyone, thereby killing his chances of at least getting a kiss before she left. But Jason didn't really mind. For the first time in forever, he was looking forward to coming to work. "Are you okay with arrangement, Jason? Because if you are not, I can ask your sister to do it instead," Jason's father asked him. No, I am good. I think I am actually getting to like this," Jason told his father, who was staring at him with an unreadable expression on his face, as though trying to figure him out. He knew that his father was more than a little suspicious, but he couldn't help it. He was happy. Rhea sat in the first-class restaurant, staring at her red-colored manicured nails as they rested on her green wrap dress, listening to the soft sound of classical music playing in the background. not wanting to look up at the brown eyes of the man sitting across the table. Hey, boyfriend of 1 year, the one that she had cheated on. She couldn't sit still knowing that she had kissed another man that morning, that she was going to work with that same man for 3 months. Is something wrong, Cupcake? Richard asked, his voice soft and caring, referring to her with a nickname that he had adopted a few months back. Rhea didn't like to be called a sweet pastry, but she knew he didn't mean any harm, and so she kept her opinions to herself. I need to tell you something, she said to him. What is it? He asked, furrowing his bushy eyebrows and drawing closer to her in his suit. It was at that moment Rhea saw how similar Richard and Seb were. It seemed like they were brothers. Rhea didn't hate Seb, but she didn't entirely like him either. She wondered how she hadn't seen the resemblance since. They both loved working and acted way above their age. They both seemed to only talk about numbers and stock. They even wore the same types of suits. It was scary. This relationship, it isn't working. Rhea started, and the look on Richard's face turned into pure desperation. No, it is working. We are good, he said, taking her hands, which she had put on top of the table. They hadn't even ordered anything. No, it isn't working. I can't pretend anymore, she said. I know I am not perfect, but I will change. For you, I will change. Is it the way I dress? Or is it the hairstyle? I will do anything, he said. He was practically begging her, and they were already attracting the attention of people in the restaurant. She had chosen to do it in a public place because she wanted to feel safe. She didn't want anything to change her mind. It is not you. I cheated on you. There, she said it. She had finally got it out of her chest. There was no way he would want her after that. Oh, he said, looking down. She almost wanted to hug him. He was actually a good guy, and she was the one that hurt him. I should get going, she said, standing up and smoothing imaginary creases from her dress. I will drop you off, he said, standing up. He had picked her up from her house, though her brothers and father weren't aware. No thanks, I will take a taxi, she said, and started walking out of the restaurant, her heels clicking on the ground, not waiting for an answer. As she sat in the back of the taxi, she realized that she didn't know what she was doing anymore. She had just done the very thing she once swore not to do. She had just broken up with a perfectly good man who had plans to marry her, for a playboy who just wanted to fuck her.